Welcome to Beyond the Headlines. My name is Joyce DeRiga. I'm editor of the Chicago Catholic, and this is where we take a look and talk to the people who are making the news that we're covering in the newspaper. And Sister Katie and I were talking just now as we opened this up. But my guest today is Sister Katie Mitchell. She's a Franciscan sister of Perpetual Adoration. And she's going to talk to us about, there's a new ministry that's really different for the Cathedral, and at least in their recent history. It's called Cabrini Ministries, and has to focus on those who are here, migrants, and others who are here that we're welcoming as a church community. So, Sister, welcome.
Thanks you very much. Coming. Great to be here with you.
So, tell us about, let's just start there. Tell us about Mother Cabrini Ministries, or Cabrini Ministries, sorry.
Cabrini Ministries. So we began this informally in August of 2023 when I first came to the Cathedral, and at that time there were all kinds of migrant families that were downtown in the shelters, and there were many of them that were being bused to Chicago from Texas. Some were being flown in. I think it was around 51,000 migrants in Chicago or so. And so the first time, I believe you were there as well, we had this big mass, and afterwards like a gathering where the families could take things that they needed.
This is January, folks, 2023.
2023.
24. It was last year. We're in 2025. It was a year ago last. That was the...
Was it in 24?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I looked it up.
Okay, good.
But
okay.
Time flies.
Time flies, and I just come to the Cathedral, and so we had a big turnout that day.
It was huge.
It really was huge, and many more than we expected. And so I began thinking to myself, we really need to do something for these families, because many of them identify as Catholics, and they have so many pastoral needs and human needs. And so at that time, there was no priest at Holy Name Cathedral to say the Masses in Spanish, so I kind of held it in my heart, and I talked a lot to Father Greg Sakowitz, who is the rector of Holy Name Cathedral. And finally, several months later, we were able to get a priest who speaks Spanish. And so we began having a Mass once a month in Spanish. And then at the same time, Cardinal Supich was encouraging us to sponsor a family, so I began helping them. It was a family from Venezuela, and it was really, really great. And through them, I met a lot of other families that were in the shelters and in the area, and went out to visit with them at times. And gradually, with the help of Mark Teresi, who's at the Cathedral, and some other great volunteers, we started to put some structure around it. We're still doing that. And so we chose the name Cabrini Ministries after Mother Cabrini, St. Francis Xavier Cabrini, who is the patroness of migrants. And we have that beautiful statue outside the cathedral. I just love it. Every day I stop by there and say a prayer to Mother Cabrini for our ministry. And so part of Cabrini Ministries is the monthly Mass, and we're hoping to increase that, and God willing, one day to have a weekly Mass in Spanish at the Cathedral. And some of the other things that we do are sponsoring families. Right now we have, say, about 8 families that we're really helping with the many urgent needs that they have. You know, they need food, they need clothing, they need employment, they need English classes, they need to know how to navigate the system where almost everything is online now, even applying for a job, so it's completely new for them. So those are some of the things that we're really doing, and right now we're forming a core team to really help with our planning, our strategic planning.
And there are a lot of there were a lot of shelters. I don't know the state of the shelters now, but there were several shelters within the cathedral. Like the cathedral, as people know, is in River North, Gold Coast, Chicago and State. Superior and State, Chicago and State, right there. And so there were families that you guys were connecting with that just organically by being out walking around.
Yes, the shelter was the Inn of Chicago. It was called. It was very near, and that's how we got to know many of the families that started to attend the Masses in Spanish as well. And those are some of the families that we're still working very closely with. And many of them are from Venezuela, but there's some from Peru and Mexico, and even we have families from Haiti that comes to the Mass in Spanish. So, and they all have children. Many of them have little children. So they're beautiful people, and to get to know the stories of some of the things that they've gone through to get here, going through at least 7 countries. And the Darien Gap, where there's a lot of abuse that takes place and criminal gangs. It's basically a jungle that they pass through.
Very dangerous. Yeah.
Very, very dangerous. And a number of people have died there. A lot of people have died there. So the stories that they have are quite impressive. And, many of them have come from, political unrest, persecution, hunger, all kinds of instability in the countries that they've come through. Some of the people I'm working with have, resisted, corruption, and so they've been persecuted. I have a family I'm working with who has wanted dead or alive posters out for them. I've seen them.
Wow.
I read the articles, and so, but they're people of faith. Most of them identify as Catholic, and so to me, it's all part of Catholic social teaching too, what we should be about as church.
You were talking before about some of the things they went through just to get here. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, they've crossed through a lot of borders, for one thing, and a lot of them have been, everything they had's been stolen, their money, so they end up not being able to, get food. Some of them had to go through the garbage in the countries that they've gone through. They've seen horrible things, like, in the Darien Gap, like babies being dropped off the side of a cliff, just fallen, people being left behind because they broke a leg. All kinds of criminal gangs that are there, sexual abuse. I know people that, have had abuse happen there as well, and just hiding, from gangs all the way through the 7 countries they go through, because they're victimized, because they're very vulnerable people. So, yeah, I know a family that they got on the train, and escaping me right now the name of that train. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes.
In Mexico.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't remember the name
of
it, but yes.
it. Yeah, but they were able to get up on top of the train where they had to ride, and the father had only one leg. And by the time they got off, the train took off, and their children were left behind.
Oh.
So the bestia, la bestia, that's what it's called. And so just things like that, hiding from people, and then to get across the border in the United States. The families that I've been working with came through the way that they were supposed to come through, many of them with the app, to get through. And then coming into a new country, and then having a choice, do you want to go to Chicago, do you want to go to New York? And so the families here chose Chicago. They were put into a shelter. They didn't know what was happening, the uncertainty, and a completely new land, a language they didn't know how to speak. Children with them, little babies. Some of them were pregnant, the women. So just the things that they've gone through are incredible. Incredible. I've heard their stories. I talked to them.
Why is it important for you that it's new? This is new for the Cathedral. I mean, the Cathedral has a lot of ministries.
Yes, it does. Yes.
But this is new. And then, we were talking, Sister Katie and I were talking about there's no Spanish Mass downtown before this. And there are, 5 parishes in the downtown. I mean, you're talking like South Loop through. I mean, I guess you could go up to as far as up to St. Clement and Lincoln Park, but there aren't any Spanish masses. So even that's huge to have it in your language.
Yes.
But yeah, how has it changed the cathedral, or like how are you seeing some of that with the effect with the parish, the other parishioners?
I think that for me, I felt that was a real need because even now I walk outside and there are people sitting out on the corners.
Oh, sure,
usually
right next
moms,
to the cathedral.
And I stop and talk to them. I know most of them. They have little babies, and they say they're Catholic. Often their babies aren't baptized, so they want to have their children baptized. I think it's just a way for them to be seen You know, so often they're invisible. They have no voice. To be able to see them, to talk to them, for them to know that the church is going to offer a Mass in their language. And that gives them a sense of belonging. And that also gives an opportunity for an encounter, you know, for people maybe who've never talked to a family from another culture that speaks Spanish, to be able to hear their stories, to make those connections. And then besides that, in the downtown, there are many, many Spanish-speaking people who've been here perhaps for years and years. And maybe their parents, maybe they would like to also have a Mass in their first language. They're all over. So I think it's like looking at the signs of the times, you know, that we have maybe 51,000 people who have come to Chicago who speak Spanish. And the downtown, you know, this is the seat of the Archdiocese. So to have that, to make that a priority, I think is very important.
Well, I'm remembering, I'm sure you don't remember, it's been over a year, but we were talking back when we came over to do that story about the first migrant Mass. And you don't think about it, but there's a ton of hotels downtown.
Oh, yeah.
And there are a lot of staff who help run those hotels.
Yeah.
And, you know, many of them are Spanish speakers, and,
Yes.
you know, maybe they want to, you know, have a place to go for Mass before, you know, in their own language. And
even at the Cathedral.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You know, restaurants,
Yeah.
you know, hotels, all over the place. You know, we have people who are Spanish speaking. That's their first language. So it gives them a sense of belonging. And what we do also after our Masses, Joyce, is we have, it's a convivencia. It's a time when people gather, they have food, they can take home things for their families. And just to see people sit down and talk to one another and to be able to share with one another. And we have little children all over the place, you know, playing and everything. So I think that gives them a sense of being together and being able to share what they've
know what they've been through.
And then we have other, you know, immigrants who also come to the Masses, you know, and for them to give them hope. You know, I was there. I know what it's like. You know, this is what I did. They make connections. They're, you know, able to talk to one another, and so I think it's very important. Yeah.
What are some of the needs besides, you know, obviously housing and that kind of stuff? But what are the real day-to-day stuff that they face? You mentioned about everything's online mostly now.
Yeah. So the cultural shift. You know, they need the language. They need, and these are things that we're talking about as our core team. To transportation. You know, they need to be able to. Some of them are waiting for their employment permissions to come in. And they've come across all of these countries, they have nothing left, you know. They need to find a place to live, you know, people that will rent to them.
Yes, because that's another, before we started, Sister Kay and I were talking about other stories that we've done, and one of the stories we did was these interns came through CCHD, Catholic Campaign for Human Development. They were seminarians, and they would do these internships, and they did it at St. Mary of the Lake on the north side. Sure. And they spent most of their day calling around to landlords, and when many of the landlords, when they found out they were renting to undocumented migrants, would say, no, we're not interested. Yeah. You know, so it's and then not to mention the amount of money that you don't have to rent to folks in these neighborhoods. I mean, it's for a person on a church salary, it's hard. You know, like there aren't neighborhoods you can afford. You know,
it's very difficult. I'm one who makes those calls, so I know. And you know, we've been trying to find donors, and we had some very generous people that were helping us, you know, with rent and housing. And it's very difficult to find people that will rent to them and in a safe area, because some of the people that I, you know, have worked with, they end up out in areas that are unsafe. They have small children, you know, and so that's one of the things that they really, really need is that, you know, then they have their pastoral needs, you know, evangelization, catechesis.
They want the sacraments.
They want the sacraments. So, you know, we're working on that as well. Medical needs. They have medical needs. I mean, I had a mother who had a gallbladder attack, needed emergency surgery. You know, I have a child has a lot of physical disabilities, so we're trying to check with that. People who are diabetic, they need their medication, so they have many, many needs, and they're urgent needs, most of them. So we're looking for good people that, will volunteer with us, that will perhaps help with some of these needs, and volunteers that will come to the masses and, to get the word out too, so others know downtown, because how are they going to know there is a Mass in Spanish at the Cathedral if they don't hear about it? So these are some of the things. But these people have needs to feel that they belong, that they're seen. A lot of emotional scars, physical scars.
I was thinking, once you get this all sorted out, then
they're
mentally, as anyone who's gone through trauma,
great trauma,
then they relax, and then mentally that comes, the dealing with whatever they saw, whatever happened to them. That's a whole other.
It is
a whole other situation.
Especially some of the children are really. I've seen children in great need. And of course, we're trying to collaborate with others as well. And that's very much a part of what we're doing. But all the time, we're having people show up that need help. And we can't do it all. So that's where the collaboration comes in and where the help comes in. I have a wonderful group in our core team, some good volunteers, some young people are volunteering that are studying medicine and things, and and then of course Father Joe Tito, who's the one who says the Mass in Spanish, part of our core team too. So we're really praying for God's guidance in this, and I know this was the priority of Pope Francis, and I know it is of Pope Leo XIV as well.
And Cardinal Cupich.
And of course, Cardinal Cupich. I run into him.
Who lives at the Cathedral.
Yeah, he lives at the Cathedral. I just saw him today. So I know it's a big priority of theirs. And
so when is Mass? Which day? Which
the
Sunday?
Next one is on Father's Day, June the 15th.
So is it always the third Sunday?
No. I wish it was always the same day, same week. So, but the next three, June 15th, at 2:30 p.m. at the Cathedral, and then July 6th at 2:30 p.m. and then August 3rd at 2:30 p.m. Those are all Sundays, and so those are our next three Masses.
And then what do you need? So hopefully if anyone who's listening or watching, what can they do? And then how can they find you?
They can find me on the Holy Name Cathedral website, and my contact information is there. We need volunteers to help us. We especially need Spanish-speaking volunteers. We need those who would be willing to make a donation to help with food, to help with rent, to help English classes. Like we need people that could help us teach, English. And people that can help others, especially Spanish speakers, find jobs, employment. They're willing to do just about anything. They just want to provide for their families.
Awesome.
Yeah, they really do.
Okay, before we let you go, Sister, before we say goodbye, folks, if you can, just a shout out for the newspaper, you go to ChicagoCatholic.com. You can find all of our stories, and we can check out and see what Pope Leo is doing. And we've got the June 14th celebration at Sox Park, not guaranteed rate, just rate field, coming up. And we do stories on like Sister Katie's ministry and other parishes and schools and lay people who are doing great stuff for migrants and lots of people, anybody in need in the Archdiocese. You can sign us up for our free newsletter. It comes out a couple times a week. Follow us on social media. You can also sign up for our subscription, which helps to support our ministry. It's $30 a year. We come out about every 2 weeks. And go to ChicagoCatholic.com. And Sister, I'm glad you could be here. Thank you so much. And any way we can help, promote what you're all doing. But folks, there's holynamecathedral.org.
That's correct.
Yeah, I know it's Holy Name Cathedral. We spell it all out. And then check it out and go stop by the Masses. Even if you're not a migrant, you can still go. I go to Masses in languages I don't always understand. That's the great universality of the Mass. So you can stop by for Mass too. So
thank you very much, Joyce. A pleasure to be here with you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And okay, folks, until next time, have a good day.